Dead Alive, also known as Braindead. It's called the goriest fright film of all time. And today we're going to take a look at the out-of-print, unrated DVD copy from Trimark, released in 1998. Let's get into this thing. So I just did a video recently talking about Bad Taste, another really gory Peter Jackson film. Some of you guys seem to enjoy that video, so I figured why not do Dead Alive. Now, if we're lucky, we'll see a 4K UHD release of this, hopefully this year. If not this year, I'm really hoping that by the time next year comes around, they have an official announcement at least. Peter Jackson himself has said he's working on Bad Taste, Meet the Feebles, and Dead Alive in 4K. And I think last year we got some news that this one was actually coming. Now what's interesting is this is really the only DVD release this has had, officially. It did have a Blu-ray release later on. That came out from Lionsgate though, on October 4th, 2011. Now these go for anywhere from $15 to $40, the DVDs. The Blu-rays are usually $100 plus. I actually found my copy a little over a year ago at a half-price Books. I know because when I buy a lot of DVDs used, sometimes I'll put the receipts in there with them, and it's still in there. I paid $13.04 for this, before taxes of course. Came out to $14.39. Just weird, interesting details, you know? But look at the top of that disc. That thing does not look great, does it? But that's the top. The bottom plays just fine. As you'll see in all of these clips, they were directly scanned from this before I recorded this. So there was a friend of mine, and growing up, he would often show me weird and bizarre horror films. He showed me both Bad Taste and Dead Alive. He had much older siblings who were into very obscure horror and other media, so my first time watching this, I was like 11 years old, and my God, I was laughing, but I was also like sick to my stomach. I genuinely do think this is the bloodiest film I have ever seen. Now it's like splatter style, like comedy gore, you know, but it really works in this film. The legacy of this movie has only continued to grow and become something more than it ever was, even when I saw it as a child. So let's talk about what makes this movie so special, right? At its heart, it's a love story, a very, very demented love story. But because it was filmed in New Zealand and Peter Jackson's the filmmaker, it has a very certain style to it. You know, it's like he's a little bit Norman Bates and she's a little bit into tarot cards. If you haven't seen Dead Alive, the best way I would describe it is to say it takes the best parts of Evil Dead and combines it with Return of the Living Dead. And what you end up with is one of the most hilarious and gory films of all time. So let's talk about some of this gore, by the way, which is all practical effects, which is what makes it so crazy. In the opening scene, which deals with an infected monkey, they end up chopping this guy's hand off. And then his arm. And slices down right on his head. And that's when we get the title card for Dead Alive, or I guess Braindead in its native country. You have the claymation rat monkey, and that whole scene at the zoo, which at this point, like if you haven't seen this movie before, you're like, what the hell am I watching? I thought this was like supposed to be super gory, and that scene at the beginning was weird, and this is where it starts to come together, and you're like, what the fuck? The mom gets attacked by it, and she crushes its head. It's a neat little gnarly effect, and speaking of gnarly effects, her like pulsating arm wound in the bed, man, I want to throw up just thinking about it. It's almost as gross as the scene in The Fly where he throws up on like the bagel or donut, whatever, to eat it. I watched that scene and I never want to eat again. Speaking of eating, I made the mistake of watching this, recording clips for this video, and heating up a bowl of SpaghettiOs because it's about 11 degrees outside right now, I want to say, and that's warm for the last few days. We have the graveyard scene, which leads to maybe the most iconic line from the movie.
I kick ass for the Lord!
And I would say arguably the best portrayal of the badass priest trope ever on film. The scene that we always heard about and talked about as kids when, you know, we would be in like 5th grade when I probably watched this, the scenes that we would talk about at recess would be like the baby scene. Now this scene isn't gross, but it's just slapsticky, ridiculous, low-budget humor. This is the scene I should have been eating SpaghettiOs during because I'd have been fine. Instead, however, I was eating the SpaghettiOs during this scene.
damn fine custard.
While we're talking about SpaghettiOs, we may as well talk about this week's sponsor. Just kidding, SpaghettiOs isn't sponsoring me, but they should, because I eat more SpaghettiOs than Paul Hogan does in Flipper. So when the chaos finally erupts at his house, this is where it becomes the goriest film of all time. There's a rib cage straight up removed from someone while they watch it removed from themselves. That's kind of like goofy, I guess, but it works. One of my favorites is the guy getting demasked, I'll call it. The hands getting slowly cut off with scissors, that's pretty deranged. The guy's like meatless legs. You know what this reminds me of? Specifically, that real Ghostbusters action figure that's a cop, but then like he drops down and there's a skeleton underneath. You could pull his legs and they'd be taller and they'd be bones in between. That's what he looks like. He looks like this guy. At this point, there is already enough blood to say, hey, I've never seen more blood than this before in a movie. Depending on what kind of person you are. After some teeth pulling, and then a glorious scene where someone's head is smashed onto a light fixture. By the way, I want to like create that as a light fixture in my house. It'd be fucking awesome. We get the best weapon ever used in a horror movie. A lawnmower with a rope. Leading us to, yes, the most blood-filled, pus-filled, rotting flesh-filled scene I've ever seen myself. That I can think of. I'm trying to cover all my bases, but look at this thing. It's fucking gnarly, man. This is not an everyday kind of movie. However, if you have a first date coming up, I would recommend throwing this on, you know? Just make sure they can stand the heat. If you really want to test them, throw on Bad Taste. I can't even show you all the clips of this like monster that his mom becomes at the end of the film because it has giant tits. Sorry, I wasn't trying to scream that into the microphone, but the cat like pushed the microphone into my face, so. Isn't he cute? His name's Yoshi. Tell him he's cute. Look at that guy. In conclusion, the last question some of you might have would be, do you think it'd be worth it to wait for the 4K, or should I pick up the Blu-ray or DVD now? What I would say is, if you can find a copy of the DVD for less than $30, I'd consider that a win. And if you're a huge physical media collector anyway, you won't mind having bought it twice when the 4K comes out. Quick thank you to my channel members and Patreon subscribers. If you want more ectoviolence, including exclusive videos and behind-the-scenes content, become a member by clicking the links in the description below.